Welcome to Biz Meds with Darris and Saad, where we give you the medications for your business. This podcast is all about the minimum effective doses you need to make a massive improvement in your business. Listen and enjoy.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Biz Meds. We are your hosts. My name is Saad.
And I'm Darris.
For today's episode, we wanted to kind of take a step back. We've been talking about frameworks. We've been talking about different aspects of businesses. We've been, hitting like the very focal points inside the whole ecosystem of a business. Taking a step back today to really look at the whole cycle of how businesses grow. And feel free to hop in at any point. And
You're doing great. I mean, you're just killing it.
just keep the podcast rolling. All right, guys.
Why am I even here? Talk about, we talk about frameworks. Frameworks are really important. And sometimes you can have the right message at the wrong time. And, I think that like today we'll talk about, we call it the 5 steps to freedom. That's the framework in terms of how to, what's the cycle that businesses go through from when they start to, ultimately where do you want to take it? And that's where, and over the courses of many businesses, you can see the same cycles happening, right? So there's essentially 5 key phases, and it's called, 5 steps to freedom. And that's just a very simple framework. So really it starts off, you look at it, it's, I always like to relate it to, I think there'll be a lot of themes when people like become more familiar with us and, there's velocity business coaching and, we have the afterburner framework. And there's a common theme through a lot of things we talk about. It's, it's the idea of creating velocity, whether that's a rocket ship or spaceship or flight or something, right? And so this one I like to relate mostly to launching a rocket or your business. And so the first phase is really their pre-launch phase. That's probably
fuel up.
Yeah, that's doing your research, that's your mission planning or your business planning, all those things that like go into
Okay, so yeah. Understanding like what the launch, how the launch is going to happen.
Yeah, you're understanding your
market. So this is before fuel up.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, so all the things that before launching,
yeah,
which would include fueling up. Yeah, absolutely, right. Making sure you have your model, right. That's where you want to learn as much as you can. You're doing market research, all that fun stuff, right?
Okay.
So that's kind of like all of the pre-launch phase, and it's pretty straightforward. That's all the pre-work that goes in, mission planning, and then from there, we go to your launch phase, and that's really as chaotic. If you've anyone's ever seen a shuttle launching on TV, and the amount of sheer energy that goes into that, like that's anyone who's started a business know it feels just as chaotic as that, right? Yeah. It's just you hit that launch button, and suddenly the world is shaking and everything. You're like, I don't know, I'm just holding on.
Yeah.
And it feels that crazy, right? So that's where you are investing a lot, right?
Yeah.
A lot of money, energy, time, fuel, right? You burn a lot of fuel.
Yeah.
You burn a lot of money. It's chaos, and it's really the hardest phase for any business to get out of and move into, right? So, there's, I don't know, you probably heard, there's so many different statistics out there about like how many small businesses fail within 5 years, right? And they say, I think at one time I heard, 90% of businesses fail. And that's been a kind of a really pervasive statistic. I don't know. It's pretty high. There's a lot of things that people try to start a business and within a few years they shut it down.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I've kind of, since COVID, the startup of small businesses has been significantly grown. So that
Absolutely.
90% could very well be true, because a lot of people assume that they know what they're getting into without really understanding it. It was funny because I was watching, actually just on the way to record this podcast, I was watching a post on Instagram talking about like, what would you prefer to do, be a 9-to-5 job or have your own business? And everybody in the comments was saying like, I'd love to have my business, except for the one person at the very top. He was like, as much as I would love to have my business, the amount of time that you have to invest into it, the research, everything, you're responsible for everything.
Yeah.
Whereas at a 9 to 5, like you just show up, and that's why like the CEOs, like the high ups, like take the big rewards because they're taking the brunt of the risk. But anyway, let's get into a different field. But,
it's fair. It's we talked about it before. You have that entrepreneurial seizure, we think we can do it better, or, we feel like we're pulled to a higher calling. And so we're going to go to business, and we have this idea that it's hard. We have this notion it's going to be hard. We just don't know what the hard it is that we're choosing. So
exactly.
This is the framework that's going to say it's hard. It literally, when it's like watching a shuttle launch, and the amount, if you've ever seen the videos from inside it, everything is shaking, and the whole world is vibrating. Everything is feel like they're falling apart, and you're like, well, I hope we get off the ground and this thing doesn't just explode.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So now that's really the time. So that launch phase is all about investing, and not just investing in anything specifically. There's a couple things that you want to invest in. That's your marketing and sales. That's the lifeblood. We talked about the last
couple episodes. Yeah.
Right. Like that's the oxygen and blood for your business. If you don't have those, you don't have a business. So that's the whole point, right? So you have to get that. You have to invest in that upfront. And then once you're able to, so if you're one of the businesses that make it out of that really chaotic launch phase, and you're able to start growing, well, then you're going to move into the next phase, which is, we call it the control phase. And think about this as like, the rocket's off the ground, the spaceship's going. This is where mission control takes over, right? So this is where you start to do all of your, you really start to stabilize things, right? And this is about where you start building systems. So this helps stabilize the flight. This helps to kind of dial things, and you're doing testing and measuring. You are, adjusting, fine tuning things along the way.
Sorry, I thought I was about to have a sneeze there.
We could have caught that. And you have a little time to adjust your model. So that's the control phase. So it's really that, liken it again to that mission control, where they're now taking control of the, making sure things are dialed in. You've gone through the hard stuff.
And it's still heading upward.
It's still heading on that. It's going in the right trajectory. It's the attention is in the right area.
Straight to the moon.
Right goal, straight to the moon. And now I think it's really important, because I think this is the one of the defining moments, is when your business hits what we like to call escape velocity. So I think, if you've watched a shuttle launch into space, there is a point where a shuttle rocket leaves the atmosphere, and what happens is they finally break through that last bit of resistance, but it's a monumental amount of energy that's going the whole time to get you there. And what happens is that once you break through, the amount of energy required to keep that going is much less.
Yeah.
And much like that struggle phase we talked about a couple of episodes back, right? If you don't say it long enough, you'll never reach that point where it breaks through. And that's what you really want. You want to hit that escape velocity. So you need to have as much energy and momentum, velocity going through, so that you can break through that point where suddenly, it just feels like, oh my goodness. So you have your systems dialed in, right? So the business operates without you. You have solid people in places, right? So this is where you are now driving down costs. Right. So you're able to do that. You're focusing on cash flow.
Yeah.
Right. So if you've taken on a lot of debt at the beginning, or spent a lot of that, now is a time where you start to be able to reap that. You'll be able to repay the debt. You're able to grow even more, invest in higher leverage things, right? Continue that growth trajectory. That's a really key one.
This is the point where you would remove the person. Well, not remove the person, but try to find optimizations and ways, so you're not hand bombing things, like optimizing just the menial tasks and growing.
You'll start to do that in your control phase. So your mission control, this is where you're really moving.
Okay.
Like you're investing in a lot more probably technological solutions, right? So if you're growing at that pace, you're probably investing in really more sophisticated technology. You are, now scaling at a massive, right? And now you're able to drive down costs along that whole kind of trajectory after you've gone through your launch phase and through into control and escape velocity. It's, again, that systems, it's people, right? So you're now developing there's a couple different ways you can look at bringing the right people on. It's at some level, do you grow them, or do you go and find that A-level talent that has the experience that you're going to just bring in and help grow your business?
Yeah.
Right. So there's all that stuff that's going on. So that's where you're just economizing, you're investing, you're repaying debt, and you're just becoming more and more flush with cash flow. Right?
Yeah.
So your cash is coming in. So you're dialing everything really, really in. And that brings us that last magical phase, which is freedom, right? I guess, which is the goal, I think.
Freedom.
You may take our lives. It's really, that's the end goal, right? And we say freedom. Well, freedom means different things for different people, right? And that's where it's really important to have a really clear vision of what you want to do. Now, there's people who get into business because they want to eventually sell it, right? And you can do that because at that point you have a really well-oiled machine. So things run on autopilot. The thing goes, it makes money. That's what you want. But you have other options, like you can license it, right? You can reproduce it. Again, you can just create more and more depending on what kind of business you have.
Yeah.
You could sell it. You could franchise it. There's a lot of different things. Or do you just to grow it? Yeah. Right. You can do that. There's a lot of different options.
Offering other serving.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's really where you're going to reproduce. You can acquire other businesses, right? Like you don't have to put all your energy into this. This thing goes, you have the people in place that are continue to grow it. And then you're able to just kind of like really reap all the rewards, and you're not involved the day to day. You are much more always driving more that strategic view of the business.
But just to capture what you just said, the key still is to focus on one thing, not many things right off the bat.
You know what? Actually, you have like just crystallized a lot of thought that just keeps coming back, is that, and it's like for business owners, you don't have a cash flow problem, you have a focus problem. You like really, I don't say that like off the cuff. It's because if I look back to any time challenges I've had, it's a focus problem.
Yeah.
It's not a money problem. The money problem is just those things are just the symptoms of a much deeper problem. Yeah. Right? It's a focus problem and not focusing on the right things. Yeah. So, early on when I said you get to launch and focus on, and you want to make sure you do marketing and sales. Well, guess what? Like that's a standard throughout all of these phases. You market and sell. Yeah. You have to feed the business. Yeah. Right. And then now what you have to do is make sure that it's profitable. Yeah. And we're not going to go into the really minutia of, how do you price? I mean, that's we're not getting into
that's getting too,
Like, we're talking about frameworks. Yeah. Right. And so so when you say something like, you focus on one thing, well, yeah, there's certain things you have to focus on at those stages, and you always have to focus on the right thing. Yeah. And it just becomes more and more clear that you do not have a cash flow problem. You have a focus problem. You have an attention, focus, time problem. Yeah. That's what it is, right? And that's the whole reason the afterburner effect or afterburner framework came into existence, was like trying to solidify those ideas. Right. So I appreciate that. That was on my mind, and it almost slipped until you said that.
Well, no, I was just, again, this is the whole purpose of having two of us here. And it just kind of like reminds me of this story. I might be butchering it. If you realize what it is or have heard of it before, just correct me where I'm wrong. But there's this.
Doesn't involve butter.
It doesn't involve it. You know what? Actually, it does involve a dog, and dogs do like butter. So, well, this story is like this kid has a dog, and the dog has fleas, and he's trying to get the fleas out. Takes them out. Next day they're back in. Takes them out. Next day they're back in. Goes to his grandma and is like, "Grandma, like I need help. Like my dog still has fleas. I can't figure out what to do." Grandma's like, feed him garlic, ginger, or I think it's garlic. Feed him garlic, and once he sweats that out, the fleas will kind of die off and fall off. So the kid goes home, tries to feed his dog garlic, and anybody that has a dog would know immediately that dog's not eating the garlic. So he tries to force it down the dog's throat, like he spits it back out, doesn't work. goes back to grandma, and grandma's like, you need to wrap it in ham or like bacon or something. And the kid goes back, wraps it in ham, bacon, and the dog immediately like just devours it. And the next day when the dog sweats out the garlic, the fleas are gone. And the purpose of the story, it for me, like, it relates to how a lot of times people don't know what they need to do until they actually implement it. And the truth is, like, focus is the biggest thing, and that's why we keep talking about attention. That's why we talk about like these are things that people do already know about, but they just don't do them, right? So as business owners, like, priority is understanding exactly what you need to be incorporating and seeing it through. Whether it's the garlic that you don't want to eat, wrap it up in some ham and shove it down, man.
That is phenomenal. I actually hadn't heard that story. That is like a really great analogy for that. It's because none of the stuff that we're talking about is revolutionary, and none of the things really are.
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes it's just having that right message at the right time is what's impactful, right? And so how do we help kind of sort through all of the noise? How do we get through all of the things that are distracting us from doing the most important things?
Exactly.
So depending on where you are in that framework is going to help you understand, what you need to focus on. And if you're having cash flow problems, I mean, first place you're going to look is, okay, marketing and sales. That's going to be your first place. And with that is like, what are you doing and where's your focus?
Exactly.
Like, how are you doing that? How are you managing your attention, focus, and as a result, flow and time to be able to achieve those goals? Because like the trade-off is it's going to take you years if you don't handle it.
Yeah.
If we don't handle it.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
And so there's always that element of do. So that's what we talked about, the big domino. Like, so what are the things that by doing that, everything else is either not required or easier?
Yeah.
And depending on, like, that's why like these frameworks are really important, because like through that, it's like, okay, well, if you are not through your launch phase and things are feeling rough, well, then you're not in the place where you need to start dialing in on systems.
Yeah.
Right. You need to focus on what marketing and sales. You need to dial that in. You'd be laser focused on that. And then when that starts spitting off cash flow, well, then that's when you're able to fund the things with, I can get better.
Grow in this.
Right. Along the way, can you leverage flow to help you do that better, faster? Absolutely. Right.
Yeah.
But like, that's got to be your focus.
Yeah.
That's what you have to be zeroed in on. And that's what you have to be able to collapse timeframes around to get you to the next level. Oh, cool. Now I'm there. Okay. I have cash flow. I have, things dialed in. So where my marketing, my leads are coming in, my sales, my conversions, all that's happening. Well, now I can start dialing in better systems. Oh, I now have money to then attract a higher capability team, right? I have more capable people that I can bring in that now leverage me to do even higher leverage tasks.
Exactly.
Right. But it's all comes down to that whole thing. And that's why when you said that, it's really around, like, you don't like our problem is focus and attention. And we are in a continual battle for that.
Yeah, exactly. And case in point, like yesterday, you'll remember, like, I ran into a bit of a crossroads, and
A situation presented itself.
Exactly. And immediately I lost focus.
Yeah.
Like, what was the first thing he said? Hey, do not react. Focus.
Emotion goes up,
Focus.
intelligence goes down.
yeah, exactly. So, the reason why I'm sharing that is because, like, I'm not beyond that myself. Like, a lot of times.
Neither of us are, right? And like we said, like if anything that comes out of this experience is us being able to hold each other and ourselves accountable and moving forward on the most important things, like living, breathing this journey is all that will make it worth it. And we get, as a result, we get to document this journey for other people and hopefully give someone else hope and be like, hey, you know what? Guess what? Everyone struggles with this stuff.
Exactly.
I swear. Just
Well,
surprised
we're
you
not
didn't.
we're not bleeping stuff out anyway. So
Anything else you want to talk about for the 5 steps of freedom?
no, I think you encompassed it perfectly.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I mean, there's probably a lot of ways we can go. I mean, in classic form, like this just is the catalyst for a million other conversations.
Exactly.
And really focus on, so I guess let's take it back to the do of what's the one thing you can do from this?
Yeah.
Right. Is I think really take stock. So if you have to go back and listen, or maybe I'll just recount the 5 steps, right? Which is your pre-launch, which is you're just starting out. So it's your research, all that stuff. So you'll know if you're there. And if you are, that's great. Like, taking this step, but making sure that you have your model, you're really looking at who your market is. You really know what you're doing. You have your product dialed in, if that is, or service, and you're really making it, that there's genuine need out there in the market, your niche and things like that. And then you move to launch. That's exactly what it is, right? You've launched your business. You're out there. You are all about investing, you're driving, growing. It's all what it is. You're investing in sales, marketing, sales, and it feels like absolutely intense all the time.
Yeah.
Right? So you have great days, you have days where you want to like just throw it all in, and those days, and it probably happens about 20 times in one day. Right? So if you're feeling like that, that's exactly where you are. That's what you need. And so I want you to take from that is, just understand where you are in your business. If it's feeling a little less crazy, but you still have a lot of those days, you're probably in control. You have a little bit more cash flow. You have a little more steady income coming in, revenue. Well, now is that time where you need to focus in on building systems, right? So people, systems, all those things that help you get better. Okay. And then from there, it's escape velocity. This is where you have now dialed a lot of those things in. Cash is starting to roll in a lot better, right? So you're going to use your excess cash to pay down your debt. That's when you start to pay that stuff down. You're continuing all along this journey. Again, remember, marketing and sales. It is right there. You're going to drive down your costs. You're going to use your cash flow, leverage better and better technology. Those bigger kind of leverage items.
Yeah.
And then you're going to eventually hit that freedom, right? You're going to break through that final resistance point. So the one thing you do is just take that framework and understand where you are, and now, like, what should you be doing in that? I think the interesting about this framework, I'll talk about this one thing I really touched on earlier, is that how you behave sometimes. So if you've passed you're in the escape velocities thing, and all of a sudden, like, you start behaving like you are in the launch phase, like, you will slide back down, right? If you don't put those systems in place, you don't take care of those things, you absolutely like fall, and the fall is much quicker than the build up. It takes much longer to build up to that phase, but if you let that go and it starts to slide, like, you will, the come down, the crash down is way quicker than
going back up.
Up. Gravity is son of a gun.
Is a bleeper.
bleep.
No, that's actually really well put. So, and again, the freedom phase is going to be different for everybody, as you mentioned.
Yeah, like, that's where I think when you're first starting out, I think people have this idea, freedom, I just want, and it really, I will say there's probably a really good exercise. And I know a lot of my clients, they have this idea of what freedom is. And when I start challenging on them, we start really talking about it, is when they're like, oh, maybe it isn't that. And I will say this, like, I know we're pretty selective with who we want to work with. And if you're building a business to sell, that's fine. Like, that's you. But like, we're not interested in that. Right. Our goals are much bigger and much more aligned to make much more of an impact. And that's fine. So, like, if you want to hit that freedom phase, you want to keep growing and going and going, well, then those are the people that we want to align ourselves with, right? And be together on the journey with, because that's, like, ultimately what we want to do. So yeah, that freedom is, I heard some people talking earlier, well, what age do you want to retire at? I'm like, I'm going to be just keeping going.
Yeah.
There's no stopping, right? There's just going to like, okay, what's the next level? What's the next thing? What are we going to continue to do?
Yeah.
So yeah, all that to say is what freedom means to you is a very worthwhile endeavor to understand what that is, so that you know what it's really the fuel that helps you, like understanding what it is that's motivating you is going to be the fuel that gets you through that launch phase when you want to throw the towel in, when you say, you know what, F this is just way too much. And you sure as hell better have one hell of a reason why you're doing that.
Yeah.
Because you will be tempted so often to throw in the towel. And guess what? You will probably try to launch and you're going to like crash and burn. And if you don't have a big enough,
because your internal compass is just not aligned.
Yeah. It's not enough fuel in that tank to keep you going. And that's what you need, right? You need that it's when everything else fails, what's going to be the thing that's going to help you push you to continue to go.
Oh, you said that really well. Like, I mean, I've thought about that myself several times. Like, if today I was to, win the lottery, I wouldn't ever be the type of person that just like completely shuts down and is just enjoying all the time. I mean, I'm lying if I said like I wouldn't be enjoying, but at the same time, like, have you ever talked to anybody that's like completely shut off all taps, isn't doing anything, and they're miserable, right? And they don't have a purpose. They don't feel like they're contributing to society, to life, and all that. Like for us, one of the biggest things is like what we want to give back to the community and how we want to help and grow what we have to offer on a larger scale, right? And it does require a different type of mindset, a different type of purpose, a different type of goal in life to make sure that you are delivering that type of impact on, people around you. So
yeah. And those are the people that we want to help continue to grow and help them achieve their goals.
Exactly.
All right. Well, hopefully, what we said we start out to do was give you a framework to understand kind of what the phases, the 5 steps that businesses go through, and be able to understand where you are in your business, and also understand like what to do in those things. And hopefully we've met that expectation. We also talked about, the other thing is, for the most part, we don't have the problems that we think we do. We have a focus and attention problem. And that's the real root of all this. Now, you can align that and really collapse timeframes around these things. Absolutely. But this is the trajectory that every business goes through. And if you don't, you are going to crash and burn.
Yep. 100%. We are approaching our 28-minute mark.
Just keep it very honest.
Yeah. So we'll, I think this is an excellent place to end it at. So we want to hear from you guys. Please comment, like, subscribe. Everybody that's been supporting us, thank you again. And please share this if you found this valuable. Share this to any other small business that you may know, or a big business. And, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. We are here just to continually provide as much value as we possibly can. And so we do thank you for still being here, listening to us blather on.
Yeah.
So yeah, like, share, subscribe, all those fun things. And we will see you in the next episode. Thank you.
Thank you.